Global Game Jam happened again this year, and the theme was Mask. The reveal trailer showed things like a literal mask, masking tape, and even the act of camouflage. In the weeks leading up to the jam, I spent the time learning how to make networked multiplayer in Godot. So myself and my friend came up with game ideas based on this mechanic. We came up with two different ideas. My idea was a sniper v sniper PvP game, and my friend's idea was a clone of Mario Party, but with more of a focus on masks. Neither of us could come to an agreement on either of these ideas. I thought his idea of a Mario Party clone would take too much work considering the time that we had, and we both agreed that my idea was probably a little bit too boring in its premise. After further discussions, we both agreed that it would be best to drop the multiplayer aspect and focus on making a single-player game instead. And I'm totally not salty about wasting several weeks of my time for something we didn't use. Which brings us to this game, Secrets, Damn Secrets, and Hidden Urges. The idea we went for instead was a game set in a mansion, where areas of the mansion would be locked behind collecting masks and other items in order to gain access to these areas. You would be NPCs along the way, they would have quests, you would do the quests, they would give you the items. And then you would obtain masks, wear the masks, and use that as a disguise to get into the areas you needed to go. Think of it as a sort of Hitman Light. Unfortunately, our old enemy of time constraints caused us to simplify the game a little bit. We kept the masks, but ditched the entire disguise mechanic. NPCs still have quests for you, but they're significantly simpler compared to what they were originally, opting instead for singular lines of dialogue instead of a much grander narrative structure. Item hunting is now a more significant mechanic than originally planned. However, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of game mechanic. The game ended up turning into a weird mix of Shenmue and Jazzpunk, with the walking around talking to people of the former, and the humor and visual vibes of the latter. The original point of inspiration was the movie Eyes Wide Shut, but the game ended up taking a more comedic tone as we started adding more art assets, text, and voice work to the game. I provide all the voices in the game, by the way. There's 7 different voice clips that have been pitch shifted, and it led to some very hilarious results. While I'm on the subject of NPCs, they all have different colors, face accessories, and hats. This is the result of randomized generation, which is used heavily in the game. The masks and quest items have a list of spawn points that they can randomly spawn at. Items on shelves, tables, are also randomly assigned. This was done in an attempt to add some replayability and some uniqueness to each player's individual playthrough. Overall, I think we made an okay game. The gameplay is a tiny bit lacking and not necessarily the most interesting of things, but I think the visual style and the inadvertent comedy of the voice acting and some of the dialogue that we wrote definitely adds to it. This year's theme, although a potentially interesting concept, was perhaps a little too difficult to work with. Godot is certainly getting better to work with, but it's still a little bit rough in places. Hard coding paths to nodes still feels like an odd design choice, especially as if you change that hierarchy you then have to change all those strings again. I'd certainly prefer Unity's get component system by comparison. Anyway, if you want to play the game, there are links down in the description for both the Global Game Jam page and the itch.io page for the game. Feel free to check it out. As for me, I don't think I'm going to do Global Game Jam next year, and maybe for the foreseeable future. I've got a lot of projects on my plate at the minute, I kind of want to focus on those. As for upcoming stuff for the channel, Seeing as I put a ton of time into it, I might as well publicly release the Godot C# networking project that I made prior to the game jam. It needs a tiny bit more work before I'm willing to release it, but I should do a video for it relatively soon. Tur should be getting a new update in either March or May, depending on if I need to delay it or not. Cyber Surfer is in a relatively good place. You should get an update later in the year. And I still have another video I want to make in the meantime. That's all for this video. I've slightly changed up the format for these videos. I think I'm going to try and keep them a lot shorter and a little less technical. Although if there is anything technical you wish for me to go into more detail about, feel free to leave me a comment. As per usual, there are links in the description for my socials, and if you want to support me, you can do so on Ko-fi. And one final thing I want to ask you, I am considering taking the game dev streams that I do on Twitch and bringing them over to YouTube. Let me know if this is something you want to see. But for now, thanks for watching, I'll see you guys next time.